The stars were quiet that night when the signal came through. Commander Lisa Grant sat in her chair on the bridge of the warship, Resolute Dawn. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. She had served in the Human Defense Coalition for 15 years, and she had seen many things in the darkness between stars. But nothing had prepared her for what was about to happen. The ship was on routine patrol near the outer edge of human space. Most of the crew were sleeping. The lights on the bridge were dim, and only the soft hum of the engines broke the silence. Then the communication panel lit up with a bright red light. Lieutenant Danny Marsh was the first to notice. He was a young man, barely 25, with nervous hands and a quick mind. He pressed a few buttons and listened to his headset. His face went pale. "Commander," he said, his voice shaking, "we're receiving a distress signal. It's coming from the Valorian system." Lisa sat up straight. The Valorian system was far away, deep in the territory of a species called the Cathari. She knew very little about them. They were peaceful creatures, six-limbed beings who spent their lives studying medicine and art. They had no weapons. They had no army. They had never needed one. "Play it," Lisa ordered. Danny pressed a button, and a voice filled the bridge. It was high and musical, the way Cathari voices always sounded. But there was fear in it now. Pure, raw fear. "Please help us. Anyone who can hear this, please help us. They came from the darkness. They are taking our people. We cannot fight them. We have no way to defend ourselves. Please, if there is anyone out there who can help us, we beg you. Please come." The message repeated again and again. Lisa listened to it 3 times before she spoke. "Do we have any information on what's happening there?" she asked. Danny shook his head. "Nothing, Commander. The Cathari don't have much contact with other species. They keep to themselves. Whatever is attacking them, it's not in our database." Lisa stood up and walked to the large window at the front of the bridge. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere out there, innocent people were being taken from their homes. People who had never raised a weapon against anyone. People who had done nothing wrong except exist in a galaxy that could be cruel beyond measure. "Wake the crew," Lisa said, "and get me a connection to Admiral Pete Cole at Coalition Command." Within minutes, the Resolute Dawn was alive with activity. Crew members rushed to their stations. Engineers checked the weapon systems. Pilots prepared the fighter craft. Everyone moved with purpose and speed. They had all heard the distress signal by now. They all knew what it meant. Admiral Pete Cole appeared on the communication screen 20 minutes later. He was an old man with white hair and a face full of scars. He had fought in 3 wars and survived things that would have killed most people. But he was also kind. He believed that strength should be used to protect the weak, not to crush them. "I've heard the signal," he said before Lisa could speak. "We're mobilizing Strike Fleet 7, 12 warships, 4 carriers, and 6,000 Marines. You'll lead them, Commander Grant." Lisa nodded. "What do we know about the enemy?" "Nothing yet. The Cathari don't have the technology to send detailed information. All we know is that someone is attacking them, and they can't fight back. Then we go in blind." Admiral Cole smiled, but there was no humor in it. "We've done it before. The galaxy calls us Deathworlders because we come from Earth, a planet of extreme gravity, violent weather, and predators everywhere. They think we're dangerous. They're right. But we're also the ones who show up when nobody else will." Lisa felt a fire building in her chest. She had joined the coalition because she wanted to make a difference. She wanted to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. This was exactly why she had become a soldier. "We'll be ready to depart in 2 hours," she said. "Good. And Commander, bring them home. All of them." The connection ended, and Lisa turned to face her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for her orders. Some of them were scared. That was normal. Only fools felt no fear before battle. But they were also determined. They had all chosen this life. They had all sworn to defend the innocent. "You all heard the signal," Lisa said, her voice carrying across the bridge. "Somewhere in this galaxy, people are suffering. They call for help, and we're going to answer. I won't lie to you. We don't know what we're walking into. We don't know how many enemies we'll face. We don't know if we'll all come back." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But I know this. We're human. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day of our existence. We survived ice ages. We survived predators. We survived each other. And now we're here, among the stars, stronger than anyone ever thought possible." She looked at each of her crew members in turn. "The Cathari can't fight. They never learned how. They never had to. But we did. We learned to fight before we learned to walk. And now it's our turn to use that strength for something good." Danny Marsh raised his hand. "Commander, the fleet is assembling. 12 warships are on approach. We'll be ready to jump in 90 minutes. Lisa nodded. "Good. Tell them we leave the moment everyone is in position." As the crew worked, Lisa walked back to the window. She thought about the Cathari gentle creatures who had never hurt anyone. She thought about whoever was attacking them, beings who saw peaceful species as easy targets. She thought about what would happen when those attackers met humans for the first time. They had no idea what was coming. The galaxy had called humans Deathworlders as a warning. It was meant to keep other species away from Earth, to mark humans as too dangerous to approach. But it was also a promise that when darkness came, when evil spread, when the innocent cried out for salvation, the Deathworlders would answer. Lisa Grant looked at the stars and made a silent vow. She would find whoever was hurting the Cathari. She would stop them. And she would make sure they never forgot what happened when they made an enemy of Earth. The fleet jumped to faster than light, speed 90 minutes later. 12 warships vanished into the void, carrying 6,000 soldiers toward an unknown enemy. They didn't know what they would find. They didn't know if they would survive. But they went anyway, because that was what humans did. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Valorian system. What they saw made everyone stop breathing. Commander Lisa Grant stood at the front of the bridge, her hands gripping the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. Around her, the crew of the Resolute Dawn stared at their screens in silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just looked at the horror in front of them. Cathar Prime was a beautiful world. It had green forests, blue oceans, and white clouds that swirled gently across its surface. The Cathari had built their civilization there for thousands of years. They had created art that made other species weep with joy. They had developed medicine that could cure diseases across the galaxy. They had lived in peace for longer than humans had existed. Now, their world was burning. Massive ships hung in orbit around the planet. There were more than 40 of them, each one black as night and shaped like a twisted claw. They were bigger than anything Lisa had ever seen, bigger than human battleships, bigger than space stations. They looked like something from a nightmare, and they were harvesting cargo. Pods descended from the ships to the planet's surface. Thermal imaging showed what was happening below. Millions of Cathari were being herded into containment areas. Families were torn apart. Children were separated from parents. The gentle, peaceful Cathari had no way to resist. They just walked into the pods and disappeared. "What are those ships?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lieutenant Danny Marsh worked his console with shaking hands. "Unknown, Commander. They don't match any species in our database. I've never seen anything like them." Captain Ben Harper's face appeared on one of the screens. He commanded the Marine assault ship Iron Verdict, and he had fought in more battles than anyone else in the fleet. His face was hard, but Lisa could see the anger burning in his eyes. "Slavers," Ben said. "They're taking slaves. They picked the Cathari because they can't fight back. Cowards." Lisa felt sick. She had known there was evil in the galaxy. She had seen it before: pirates, criminals, tyrants who crushed their own people. But this was different. This was organized. This was industrial. Whoever these beings were, they had done this before. They had turned the capture of innocent people into a system. "Can they see us?" Lisa asked. Tactical Officer Amy Vance checked her readings. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind like a computer. Nothing escaped her attention. "No, Commander. They're not even running active sensors in our direction. Their attention is completely focused on the planet. Why would they look for threats?" Ben said bitterly. "They've never met one. They pick targets that can't resist. Why would they expect anyone to come help?" Lisa stared at the enemy ships. 43 of them, each one massive and heavily armed. Her fleet had 12 warships. The numbers weren't good, but numbers weren't everything. "What can you tell me about their ships?" she asked. Amy pulled up her analysis. "They're big, but they're slow. Their weapons look powerful, but they're designed for intimidation, not real combat. Their shields are strong against natural threats, asteroids, radiation, that sort of thing, but I don't think they've ever faced military-grade weapons." "They've never had to," Danny added. "They attack people who can't fight. They've never met an enemy that shoots back." Lisa nodded slowly. A plan was forming in her mind. These slavers were predators, but they were lazy predators. They hunted the weak because it was easy. They had grown comfortable. They had forgotten what it meant to face something that could hurt them. They were about to remember. "Open a channel to all ships," Lisa ordered. Danny pressed a button. "Channel open, Commander." Lisa took a deep breath. Every ship in the fleet could hear her now. Every soldier, every pilot, every Marine. They were all waiting for her words. "This is Commander Grant," she began. "You've all seen what's happening on that planet. You've all seen the ships in orbit. I'm not going to lie to you. There are more of them than there are of us. They're bigger than us. On paper, this looks like a fight we can't win." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But we're not fighting on paper. We're fighting for real. And in real fights, the biggest and the strongest don't always win. Sometimes the ones who win are the ones who want it more. The ones who refuse to give up. The ones who would rather die than walk away from people who need help." She pointed at the view screen, at the black ships and the burning world below. "Down there, millions of innocent people are being taken from their homes. They're being separated from their families. They're being loaded into cargo pods like animals. And they can't do anything about it. They never learned to fight. They never had to." Her voice grew harder. "But we learned. We learned a long time ago, on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to fight predators. We learned to survive impossible odds. We learned that the only thing standing between the weak and the strong is someone willing to take a stand." She looked around the bridge at her crew. They were watching her with fire in their eyes. "Today, we take that stand. Today, we show these slavers what happens when they make an enemy of Earth. Today, we teach them why the galaxy calls us Deathworlders." She straightened her spine. "All ships, prepare for combat. We attack in 10 minutes." The channel closed and the bridge erupted in activity. Officers shouted orders. Pilots ran to their fighters. Marines loaded their weapons and checked their armor. The entire fleet transformed from a group of travelers into a war machine. Ben Harper's face appeared on the screen again. "My Marines are ready, Commander. Just give us a target." Lisa smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You'll have plenty of targets soon, Captain. Just make sure your people are ready for anything." "We're human," Ben replied. "We're always ready for anything." Amy Vance looked up from her console. "Commander, I've identified their command ship. It's the largest one, positioned at the center of the formation. If we can disable it, their coordination will fall apart. Then that's our first target," Lisa said. "But I don't want to destroy it. I want to capture it. I want prisoners. I want to know who these people are, where they came from, and how many more of them are out there." Danny nodded. "Understood, Commander. I'll make sure all ships know the objective." Lisa turned back to the view screen. The black ships still hung in orbit, unaware of what was coming. They were still sending pods to the surface, still harvesting innocent people, still believing they were untouchable. In 9 minutes, they would learn how wrong they were. The galaxy had many predators. Species that preyed on the weak, that took what they wanted because no one could stop them. They had grown used to a universe where might made right, where the strong did whatever they pleased. But they had never met humans before. Humans came from a death world. They had evolved alongside predators, survived extinction events, built civilizations in the harshest environments imaginable. They had fought each other for thousands of years, developing weapons and tactics that no other species could match. And now they were here. The countdown reached 0, and Strike Fleet 7 surged forward into battle. The humans struck without warning. The first wave was invisible. Electronic warfare ships moved into position and released a storm of signals that crashed into the enemy fleet like a tidal wave. Sensors went blind. Communication systems screamed with static. The slaver's command structure dissolved into chaos within seconds. On the bridge of his command ship, the Korvath fleet commander clicked his mandibles in confusion. He was a tall creature, covered in dark chitinous armor, with 4 arms and compound eyes that could see in every direction. His species had conquered dozens of worlds. They had taken millions of slaves. Nothing had ever challenged them like this. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why can't we see?" His officers scrambled to restore their systems, but nothing worked. Every time they cleared one signal, another took its place. It was like fighting fog no matter how hard they tried. They couldn't push through. Then the human warships appeared. They came from multiple directions at once, moving faster than any ships the Korvath had ever seen. Their weapons fired in perfect coordination, striking the same points on multiple enemy vessels simultaneously. Shields that had never faced military weapons crumbled under the assault. Lieutenant Commander Rick Santos led the fighter squadrons. He was a young man with dark hair and quick reflexes, born on a space station and trained to fly before he could drive a car. His small craft weaved between the massive Korvath ships like a needle through cloth. "Remember your orders," Rick called to his pilots. "Disable, don't destroy. Target their engines and weapons. Commander Grant wants prisoners." The fighters swarmed around the enemy vessels, too small and fast to hit. The Korvath weapons fired wildly, trying to track targets they could barely see. They were designed to intimidate helpless species, not to fight actual combat craft. It was like trying to swat flies with a hammer. One by one, the Korvath ships went dark. Their engines died. Their weapons fell silent. They drifted helplessly in space, unable to move or fight back. But the battle wasn't just in space. It was also on the ground. Captain Ben Harper stood at the door of a drop pod, checking his powered armor one final time. Around him, 50 Marines prepared for descent. They were big men and women, made bigger by the mechanical suits that covered their bodies. Each suit could lift a small vehicle, stop most weapons, and keep its wearer alive in almost any environment. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced. Ben looked at his soldiers. Their faces were hidden behind helmets. But he knew what they were feeling: fear, determination, anger at what they had seen on their screens. These were the best warriors humanity had produced, volunteers who had chosen this life, knowing they might die at any moment. "Listen up," Ben said. "Down there, innocent people are being loaded into slave ships. Our job is to stop that. We're going to hit the main containment area, free as many Cathari as we can, and eliminate any resistance. These slavers have never fought humans before. They have no idea what's coming." He paused. "Show them." The drop pods launched. Ben felt the familiar sensation of falling, the rush of atmosphere, the heat of re-entry, the violent shaking as the pod slowed itself. Then impact. The door blew open, and he charged out into hell. The containment area was a nightmare. Thousands of Cathari huddled in metal cages, their large eyes filled with terror. Korvath soldiers moved between them, using electric prods to force them toward the cargo pods. The air smelled like fear and burned metal. Ben raised his rifle and started shooting. The first Korvath fell before it knew what was happening. The second managed to turn around before a plasma bolt took it in the chest. The third tried to raise its weapon, but Ben was already on top of it, his armored fist crushing through its exoskeleton. All around the containment area, Marines emerged from drop pods and began their assault. The Korvath soldiers tried to fight back, but they had never faced anything like this. Their weapons were designed to control unarmed prisoners, not battle-hardened soldiers in powered armor. Sergeant Megan Cross led her squad toward the largest concentration of Cathari. She was a short woman with red hair and freckles, and she looked almost gentle when she wasn't fighting. Right now, she was not gentle at all. A Korvath soldier fired a neural disruptor at her. The weapon was designed to overwhelm the nervous system, causing instant paralysis in most species. Megan stumbled, shook her head, and kept advancing. The Korvath stared at her with something like disbelief. "That's supposed to drop you." It clicked through its translator. Megan smiled beneath her helmet. "I'm human. We evolved on a planet covered in electrical storms. Our nervous system laughs at your little toy." She raised her rifle and fired. The Korvath dropped. Behind her, more Marines were cutting through the cages, freeing the Cathari prisoners. The gentle creatures looked confused and frightened. They had never seen violence like this. They had certainly never seen anyone fight for them. "It's okay," Megan said to a group of young Cathari who were huddled together in a corner. "We're here to help. We're going to get you out of here." One of them, a small creature with bright blue fur, looked up at her with enormous eyes. "Why?" it asked in a tiny voice. "Why would you help us? You don't know us." Megan knelt down so she was at eye level with the young Cathari. Through her helmet speakers, her voice was surprisingly soft. "Because you needed help," she said simply. "That's reason enough." The battle lasted less than an hour on the ground. The Korvath soldiers, faced with an enemy they couldn't intimidate or control, broke and ran. Some tried to surrender. Others tried to hide. A few fought to the death, but they were quickly overwhelmed. In space, the situation was similar. The human fleet had disabled 31 enemy vessels and destroyed 12 that refused to surrender. The Korvath command ship was captured intact, its crew taken prisoner. Commander Lisa Grant walked through the corridors of her ship, listening to the reports coming in from every sector. The battle was won. The Cathari were being freed. The enemy had been defeated, but she felt no joy. Only a cold, hard determination, because this wasn't over. The Korvath had come from somewhere. They had been doing this for a long time. There were more of them out there, and there would be more victims if they weren't stopped. She intended to stop them. "Commander," Danny Marsh's voice came through her communicator. "The Korvath fleet commander is asking to speak with you." Lisa paused. "Is he surrendering?" "I don't think so, ma'am. He seems confused. Lisa smiled grimly. "I'll bet he is. Tell him I'll speak with him soon. First, I want to make sure every single Cathari is safe." "Understood, Commander." Lisa continued walking, thinking about what would come next. The galaxy was vast, and there were many species like the Korvath predators who preyed on the weak because they could. They had operated in darkness for centuries, believing no one would ever challenge them. They were wrong. The Deathworlders had arrived. Elder Valeth had lived for 300 years. In all that time, he had never known fear. Not real fear, the kind that grips your heart and squeezes until you cannot breathe. The Cathari had evolved past such things long ago. They had created a society of peace, where violence was unknown and conflict was resolved through gentle discussion. They had no predators on their world. They had no enemies in the stars. Fear was something they read about in ancient texts, a relic of a primitive past they had left behind. Now, hiding in the ruins of his council chamber, Valeth understood fear for the first time. The dark ships had come 3 days ago. They had appeared without warning, blocking out the stars like a terrible shadow. At first, the Cathari had tried to communicate with them. They sent messages of welcome, offers of friendship, invitations to share in their knowledge and art. The response was violence. Soldiers descended from the ship's tall, armored creatures with too many limbs and eyes that showed no mercy. They swept through Cathari cities with brutal efficiency, herding the population into containment areas. Anyone who moved too slowly was struck with electrical weapons. Anyone who tried to run was caught and beaten. The Cathari had no way to resist. They had never developed weapons. They had never learned to fight. They simply watched as everything they had built was destroyed, as their families were torn apart, as their people were loaded into cargo pods and taken away. Valeth had sent the distress signal on the first day. He had broadcasted on every frequency, begging anyone who could hear to help them. But he held no hope. The galaxy was vast, and the Cathari had few friends. Who would come to save a species that had nothing to offer? Who would risk their lives for strangers? Then, on the third day, the sky split open with fire. Valeth saw it through a crack in the wall, bright streaks of light cutting through the clouds. Explosions blooming in the upper atmosphere. The distant thunder of weapons he had never heard before. At first, he thought it was more attackers. More enemies coming to finish what the dark ships had started. But then he saw the soldiers. They fell from the sky in metal pods, crashing into the streets with tremendous force. The doors blew open, and armored figures emerged shorter than the dark creatures, but somehow more terrifying. They moved with a speed and violence that made Valeth's mind reel. They raised strange weapons and began cutting down the enemy, soldiers like they were nothing. Valeth watched as one of the armored figures took a direct hit from an enemy weapon. The figure stumbled, shook its head, and kept advancing. Another was surrounded by 3 enemy soldiers. It killed all 3 in seconds, its movements so fast Valeth could barely follow them. Who were these beings? Where had they come from? Why were they here? The battle raged for what felt like hours. Valeth heard screaming, explosions, the crack and hiss of weapons fire. He saw enemy soldiers running away, actually running away from the armored figures that pursued them. He saw the containment cages being cut open. Cathari prisoners, stumbling out in confusion and disbelief. Then the door to his chamber exploded inward. Valeth scrambled backward, pressing himself against the wall, certain that death had finally found him. But the figure that stepped through the smoke was not an enemy. It was one of the armored beings, covered in scorch marks and dents, moving with the careful steps of someone who had just survived something terrible. The figure stopped and looked at Valeth. Then it raised its hands to its helmet and removed it. Valeth stared. It was a female. Young, by the standards of most species. Her skin was pale, covered in sweat and grime. Her hair was red, plastered to her forehead. Her eyes were a strange color green, like the forest that were now burning outside. And those eyes were looking at him with something he had never expected to see. Kindness. "Elder Valeth?" the female asked. Her voice was rough, tired, but gentle. Valeth nodded slowly. He could not find words. "I'm Sergeant Megan Cross," she said. "Human Defense Coalition. We received your distress signal." "Are you injured?" Human. Valeth had heard that word before, whispered in fearful tones by other species. Humans came from a death world, a planet of crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, and predators at every turn. The galactic community had labeled them dangerous, unpredictable, violent. Other species kept their distance from humans, afraid of what they might do. And now a human was standing in front of him, asking if he was hurt. I am not injured," Valeth managed to say. "But I do not understand. Why are you here?" "We have nothing to offer you. No resources, no strategic value, no military alliance. Why would you come to help us?" Megan frowned, as if the question genuinely confused her. "You called for help," she said simply. "We came. That's how it works where we're from." Valeth felt something break inside him. For 300 years, he had believed that the universe operated on logic and self-interest. Species helped each other when there was something to gain. Alliances were formed based on mutual benefit. No one did anything for nothing. But these humans, these Deathworlders, had crossed vast distances, risked their lives, and fought a terrifying enemy for no reason at all. Simply because the Cathari had asked. Tears began to flow from Veleth's large eyes. He had not cried since he was a child, so long ago that he barely remembered what it felt like. But now he could not stop. Megan seemed to understand. She said nothing, just waited patiently while the ancient Cathari wept. Finally, Veleth composed himself enough to speak. "We were told that Deathworlders were monsters," he said. "That your violent nature made you too dangerous to approach. We were warned to stay away from your kind." Megan smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was warmth in it. "We are dangerous," she admitted. "Very dangerous. But not to people like you. We're dangerous to people like them." She gestured toward the window, where the remains of the enemy soldiers lay scattered in the streets. "We come from a hard world," she continued. "A world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to fight because we had no choice. We learned to be violent because it was the only way to survive. But we also learned something else, something that matters more than all the violence and strength." Valeth looked at her, waiting. "We learned to protect each other," Megan said. "We learned that the strong have a duty to defend the weak. We learned that when someone calls for help, you answer. Even if it's dangerous. Even if there's nothing in it for you. Even if you might not come back." She put her helmet back on, sealing it with a soft click. "Your people are being rescued right now," she said. "Our medics are treating the wounded. Our ships have captured most of the enemy fleet. This is over, Elder Valeth. You're safe now." Valeth rose slowly to his feet. His old legs trembled, but he forced them to hold him upright. He looked at this human, this Deathworlder, who had come from across the galaxy to save his people. "Thank you," he said. The words seemed too small, too insignificant, but he did not know what else to say. "Thank you for coming." Megan nodded. "You're welcome. Now let's get you out of here. There are people who will want to see that you're okay." She offered him her armored hand. Valeth took it. Outside, the battle was ending. Human soldiers moved through the streets, securing enemy prisoners and helping free Cathari to safety stations. Medical teams worked on the wounded, both Cathari and human. The cargo pods that had been taking people away were now being emptied. Their terrified passengers guided gently back to solid ground. The dark ships still hung in orbit, but they were silent now. Defeated. Captured. Their reign of terror was over. Valeth looked up at the sky, at the human warships that now stood between his world and the darkness. He thought about everything he had believed about the galaxy, about Deathworlders, about the nature of strength and violence. He had been wrong about so much. The humans were not monsters. They were guardians. They were protectors. They were exactly what the Cathari and so many other peaceful species had needed all along. For the first time in 3 days, Valeth felt something other than fear. He felt hope. The battle was over, but the work was just beginning. Commander Lisa Grant stood in the cargo hold of the captured Korvath flagship. The space was massive, designed to hold thousands of slaves for transport across the galaxy. Now it was empty, its prisoners freed, its crew in chains. The air smelled like chemicals and fear, the lingering memory of countless innocent beings who had suffered here. Lisa walked slowly through the hold, her boots echoing against the metal floor. Behind her, 2 Marines followed at a respectful distance. Ahead of her, bound in heavy restraints, sat the Korvath fleet commander. He was even larger than the soldiers her Marines had fought on the ground. His chitinous armor was dark purple, almost black, and covered with intricate patterns that probably meant something important to his species. His compound eyes tracked her movement with an expression she could not read. His mandibles clicked softly, producing sounds that his translator turned into words. "You should not have come here," he said. "You do not understand what you have done." Lisa stopped a few feet away from him. She crossed her arms and looked at him the way a scientist might look at an interesting but disgusting insect. "Tell me," she said calmly. "Help me understand." The Korvath leaned forward, straining against his restraints. "We are the Korvath Dominion. We have ruled the outer reaches of this galaxy for 1,000 years. We have taken worlds beyond counting. Our empire stretches across sectors you have never even heard of." He paused, his mandibles clicking faster. "You are a small species, young, insignificant. You cannot fight us all. Release us now, and perhaps the Dominion will show mercy when we return." Lisa said nothing for a long moment. She just looked at him, her face completely still. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized that her prey was even weaker than she had thought. "Let me tell you something about my species," she said. Her voice was soft, almost friendly, but there was steel underneath. "We come from a planet called Earth. It's what the rest of the galaxy calls a death world. Do you know what that means?" The Korvath's compound eyes shifted slightly. He knew the term. "It means our planet tried to kill us every single day of our existence," Lisa continued. "The gravity is crushing. The weather is violent. The other creatures there evolved alongside us, just as dangerous, just as determined to survive. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth because we were the biggest or the strongest. We became dominant because we were the most stubborn, the most adaptable, and the most willing to do whatever it took to survive." She took a step closer. "We have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. We've developed weapons that can destroy entire cities in seconds. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters that wiped out most of the life on our planet. And through it all, we kept going. We kept fighting. We refused to give up." The Korvath was silent now, his mandibles still. "Your species picked a target you thought couldn't fight back," Lisa said. "The Cathari are peaceful. They have no weapons, no army, no concept of violence. They were easy prey. You thought you could just take them, and no one would care." She leaned forward until her face was inches from the Korvath commander's compound eyes. "You were wrong." The Korvath made a sound that might have been defiance. "The Cathari mean nothing to us. They are weak. They are prey. That is the natural order of things. The strong take from the weak. This is how the universe works. Lisa shook her head slowly. Not anymore. The Cathari are under our protection now. So is anyone else who asks for help. And if your Dominion has a problem with that, we'll be happy to discuss it further. She straightened up and looked at the Marines behind her. Make sure he's transported to our holding facility. I want a full interrogation. Everything he knows about the Dominion's territory. Their other fleets, their operations. Yes, yes. Commander, one of the Marines replied. Lisa turned back to the Korvath one final time. You wanted to know what we're going to do? I'll tell you. We're going to send you back to your leaders with a message. We're going to tell them exactly what happened here. How 12 human warships destroyed your entire fleet, freed your prisoners, and captured your command ship. She paused. And then we're going to tell them that if they ever touch an innocent species again, we'll come for them. All of them. We'll hunt them across the galaxy, tear apart their empire piece by piece, and make sure they never hurt anyone else. That's not a threat. It's a promise. The Korvath commander said nothing. But Lisa could see something new in his compound eyes. Something that probably hadn't been there for centuries. Fear. 3 months later, the Galactic Council convened for an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, a massive structure floating in neutral space. They had come to discuss the events in the Valorian system and their implications for the galaxy. Elder Veleth stood at the speaker's platform. He looked different than he had 3 months ago. There was strength in his posture now, a confidence that came from surviving something terrible and discovering that he was not alone. Honored representatives, he began, his musical voice carrying across the vast chamber. I come before you to speak about the humans, the species you have labeled Deathworlders, the beings you have warned each other to fear and avoid. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many species had heard the stories from the Valorian system, but few believed them entirely. The idea of a species that would fight for strangers, that would risk everything for nothing, seemed impossible. 3 months ago, my people faced extinction, Veleth continued. An enemy came from the darkness and began taking us. We had no way to fight. We had no hope of survival. All we could do was send a signal into the void and pray that someone would hear. He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. The humans heard, and they came. He described the battle, the human ships appearing like avenging spirits, the soldiers descending from the sky, the enemy fleet crumbling before an onslaught it never expected. He described the aftermath, the rescued prisoners, the medical care, the gentle kindness of warriors who had just finished fighting for their lives. We were taught that Deathworlders were to be feared, Veleth said, that the violence bred into their nature made them dangerous. We were told to keep our distance, to avoid contact, to treat them as threats. His voice grew stronger. We were wrong. He looked directly at the human delegation seated in the chamber. Commander Lisa Grant was there, along with Admiral Pete Cole and several others. They sat quietly, watching him with expressions that gave nothing away. Humans are dangerous, Veleth admitted, to those who prey upon the innocent, to those who think that power gives them the right to hurt others, to those who hide in the darkness and take what they want because no one stops them. To those beings, humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. He turned back to the full assembly. But to the rest of us, to the peaceful, the vulnerable, the ones who cannot defend themselves, humans are something else entirely. They are guardians. They are protectors. They are hope. He raised one of his 6 arms in a gesture of formal declaration. The Cathari people formally request an alliance with the human coalition. We offer our knowledge, our medicine, our friendship. And in return, we ask only that they continue to be what they have always been, the ones who answer when the innocent call for help. The assembly erupted in discussion. Some species were shocked. Others were skeptical. A few were afraid. But many, especially the smaller, weaker species who had always lived in fear of larger predators, looked at the humans with something new in their eyes. Hope. Later that night, Lisa Grant stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at the stars. The alliance had been approved. The Cathari were now officially under human protection. More importantly, the message had been sent to the Korvath, to every other predatory species, to the entire galaxy. The Deathworlders were watching, and they would come for anyone who hurt the innocent. Danny Marsh appeared beside her. "Commander, we're receiving new signals. Distress calls from 3 different systems. Small species, no military capabilities, facing various threats." Lisa nodded slowly. She thought about all the beings out there in the darkness. The peaceful ones, the gentle ones, the ones who had never learned to fight because they had never needed to. They were calling out, hoping someone would hear. "Plot courses to all 3 systems," she said, "and notify the fleet. We have work to do." The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were just getting started. Across the galaxy, in the dark spaces between stars, predators began to hear stories about a new species, Deathworlders, from a place called Earth. Stories about ships that appeared without warning, soldiers that couldn't be stopped, warriors who fought for strangers and asked nothing in return. Some predators laughed at the stories. Some ignored them. Some decided to test whether they were true. All of them learned. The galaxy was changing. A new power had emerged, not conquering, not demanding, not taking. Just protecting. Just helping. Just answering the calls that echoed through the void. The Deathworlders were listening. And when the innocent cried out for help, they would come. Always.